Good evening. In episode 3 of Good Eats, we dealt with what I consider to be the protein as malleable and adaptable as any T-1000, and if you don't get that reference, we can't be friends. So, why the reload? Well, because in the last 20 years, my own methods have evolved as I've cooked. I have no idea how many Gallus domesticus ova. So let us dive into the show already in progress from July 1999. And with a little nod to the pop culture of the day, this is the Egg Files, a fine example of
the chicken, it's been said, is just an egg's way of making more eggs. And since she can grind out one about every 25 hours, the female Gallus domesticus here could be considered an egg factory. No rooster necessary. And since she's a cumulative layer, as long as somebody keeps taking them, she'll keep making them. 365 days a year, no Lamaze, no epidural. Now that's dedication. Now the egg's sophisticated design stems from its intended function as both food and shelter. In the center, the yolk. Pure nourishment, high in fat, minerals, vitamins, it's got it all. The white provides physical support and bacterial protection.
Bacterial protection comes complements of a protein called avidin. Avidin bonds specifically and firmly to vitamin B7, which is crucial to metabolic activities in many life forms, including some naturally occurring bacteria. Avidin is shut down by heat, so cooked egg whites are technically more nutritious than raw. Sorry, Rocky.
Now, sophisticated though it may be, the egg doesn't just pop out of the chicken and into a carton. In processing plants like this one, eggs are bathed, sanitized, dried, and then candled. Used to be a prospective buyer would hold an egg up to a candle or some other flame to take a look at what was going on inside. A trained eye can always spot anomalies like blood spots or overlarge air sacs or even hairline fractures, stuff like that. Today, computers do most of the work, but it still takes a trained human eye to spot certain problems. The eggs that do pass the scrutiny of man and machine pass over a jet of air that actually weighs them, and then the computer sends them off to their respective containers.
Ah, but what of grading, you ask? Look, he's about to launch into a truly monotonous monologue. Here's what you need to know. The USDA gives shell eggs a grade of AA, A or B, based upon the condition of the shell, the size of the air cell inside, the definition of the yolk, and the clarity and firmness of the white or albumin. Sidebar, albumin with an E is an egg white. Albumin with an I is a protein inside albumin. Confused? Write your congressman. Not all eggs come with a grade as the process is voluntary and it ain't free. As a result, eggs or cartons bearing the USDA shield typically cost more.
That's right, Daddy. Make it rain.
A room temperature egg ages more in 1 day than a refrigerated egg ages in a week. So, keeping this box at or a little below 40 degrees will help what's in this box stay fresher longer. But don't keep your eggs in those little slotty things in the door. Door spends too much time wagging around in hot kitchen air, and shelf bins, like the ones that come with your refrigerator, promote drying and breakage. So, keep fresh eggs in their own carton. It's designed to hold them. And keep it towards the back of the shelf.
By the way, it's my belief after 20 years of research that the twisted cord of egg white, called the chalaza, that is responsible for keeping the yolk safely centered in the white, is aided by our storing eggs on their sides. While not a big factor perhaps for scrambled eggs, this can make applications like deviled eggs a lot less devilish.
Once upon a time, eggs were considered germ-free zones, purity in a shell. I mean, Rocky drank like a glass load and got, what, a dozen sequels? But ever since that gastrointestinal bad boy, Salmonella, skunked his way into the hen house, we've all become deathly afraid of an undercooked egg, be it in mayonnaise, hollandaise, a soft-boiled egg, or, well, eggs over easy. Heck, most restaurants won't even serve eggs over easy anymore. Too much liability. And when they do, well, let's just say we're working from a whole different culinary dictionary. You're some kind of food cop, aren't you?
Okay, let's hold it right there. Junior here is about to engage in a conversation with a very nice doctor from the CDC, but that was 1999 and things have changed. Salmonella outbreaks declined after the late 90s and stabilized during the mid-2000s. The CDC's models project that between 1997 and 2017, Over-Easy eggs specifically were responsible for 5 outbreaks of salmonella, 29 actual illnesses, 7 hospitalizations, and 1 death. To put that in context, 5 people that we know of died in 2018 alone from E. coli on lettuce. I also want to argue that the numbers may now reflect the fact that more people are getting salmonella these days from handling their own backyard chickens. Okay, than they did 20 years ago, all right? I also know that since this show was produced in 1999, I've consumed at least 1,000 raw or undercooked eggs, and all I got was fat, though martinis and potato chips may have been a factor. Still, I understand that adults over 65 and, let's see, kids under 5, weakened immune system folks, HIV, AIDS, diabetes, organ transplant people, probably should not take any chances at all with, anything. That said, pasteurized shell eggs have become widely available, so folks that want their yolks runny should be able to get them no matter what. Luckily, I've got my own chicken. That's what I'm talking about.
Are you thinking about refinancing your home? I'm Mark Tice with HMS Capital. Don't go back to square one with a standard 30-year refinance. Instead, get ahead in the game. At HMS Capital, no matter how many years remain on your current mortgage, we can customize the loan program to keep you on schedule and lower your rate. Best of all, there's no application, appraisal, or any loan fees when you apply. So call today or visit hmscapital.com.
HMS Capital is an equal housing lender.
I couldn't go to my prom. I couldn't do any of the normal things teenagers were doing at my age. The first time I did dialysis, I was 15 years old. I was going to be on dialysis for the rest of my life. It was a loss that I didn't know how to cope with. The people behind Prop 23 are playing politics with our lives. If Prop 23 passes, it's going to put a lot of patients at risk. Please join me and tens of thousands of dialysis patients in voting no on 23.
Beholden to powerful interests. That's what the Mercury News says about Dave Cortese. Cortese took thousands from police unions, voted to weaken oversight of police deadly force, and opposed ending for-profit cash bail. What did the Merc say about Ann Ravel? A proven record of integrity, fearless in speaking truth to power, a much-needed voice of conscience. Ann will fight for equal justice for every Californian. Join President Obama. Ann Ravel for State Senate, because your fight is her fight.
It only seems right to preserve the legacy of the properly eased over egg. It all starts with a small non-stick skillet.
Nope, nope, nopity, nope. I know, eggs are notorious for getting themselves into sticky situations, but I do not use non-stick pans anymore. When subjected to very high heat, they can give off toxic fumes, which means they're never okay for the broiler. And those non-stick surfaces are, in my opinion, temporary at best. Okay, so I have come to swear by carbon steel, which is not the same as cast iron, despite substantial metallurgical similarities. Consider, both of these pans are mostly iron, but the cast iron contains around 3% carbon and some silicon and some manganese, while the carbon steel contains only about 1% carbon, which does seem strange given its name. Now, what carbon does in a metal is, look at it this way, okay? This dough and this batter are composed of basically the same ingredients in different amounts. This one is pourable and thus suitable for cooking in a mold. That's cast iron, all right, with a higher amount of carbon. Now, this one is drier and pliant, suitable for rolling, shaping, and cutting. That's carbon steel, which actually has less carbon. Pans made this way are typically cut from flat sheets that have been rolled, so it's easy to shape with shallow edges and sides. Also, because they're worked under considerable pressure, carbon steel pans are lighter and typically smoother than modern cast iron. Oh, here's another reason I like them. Heat. Aluminum and copper are very efficient conductors, but that which heats quickly gives it up just as quickly. Cast iron and carbon steel get hot. It takes a while, but they stay that way. Another thing, like cast iron, carbon steel pans do get slicker with use. That said, most of the models on the market today are pre-cured. If yours is dark like this, it's good to go. If it's light and silvery, you're gonna have to cure it, and that's, I'm afraid, another show. Now let's talk about egg cookery and heat, okay? The vast majority of recipes that have been published for over-easy and fried eggs, including my own up to this time, make very, very vague references to heat, okay? Now, if doneness is key, and it is, we can't just put a pan over low heat for 5 minutes and have that mean anything. I mean, what is low or what is high? It doesn't make any sense. Look, if you want a perfect fried egg, simply try this. Don't worry, we don't need no stinking cooktop. Whenever I cook eggs these days, I park my 10-inch carbon steel pan in the oven and crank it to 450 degrees. When the oven hits temp, I leave it for another 30 minutes. Now, if you're gonna follow me down this path, you will also need a lid that fits your pan as tightly as possible. I borrowed this one from a 4-quart saucier. Have it standing by. To properly fry 2 large eggs, we will require a tablespoon of quality butter. It's 14 grams, should you wish to weigh, at room temperature. Now, I typically park mine on a little piece of parchment for reasons soon to be revealed. It's important that this be soft but not melted, because if it's melted, it's gonna hiss and spit when it hits the pan like Niedermeyer cussing a pledge pin. Really? Pledge pin? You don't, oh, I feel old. Crack 2 eggs into a small bowl. Note, I am cracking them on the flat counter, not on the bowl edge, thus preventing pernicious shell shards. Carefully extract the pan. It's hot. All right, the pan goes right onto the cooktop, not because we need its heat, but because people are used to seeing hot pans there. It's a safety thing. Butter goes in, give it a swirl, and when it's almost but not completely melted, add the eggs and then a nice pinch of salt. Eggs need salt. The lid goes on, the tightest fit that you can find. I put a towel on top to signal to everyone that it's hot and set the timer for 4 minutes. You're also gonna want some kind of flexible spatula like this. If for some reason I wanted to cook a single egg, I would use an 8-inch carbon steel pan, heated the same way, but with only 7 grams of butter. And of course, you would use a lighter pinch of salt. Still a lidded cook, but this time only for 3.5 minutes. So, what do I do when cooking eggs for several people? Since they're relatively inexpensive, I just heat 2 or 3 pans at a time, or maybe 12. What can I say? Carbon steel's pretty much my go-to metal these days. Time to de-lid. There. Now, that's just what I want. The lighter, thin albumin has gone just a little bit crunchy around the edges. The thicker albumin is still creamy, and of course, well, we'll have to get to the yolks in a second. I usually serve on toast because I don't want to lose a drop of that goodness. All right, now let's have a look at that yolk, which of course we want to be oozy, but not runny, right? Let's find out. Yeah, you want this, you know you want this, but I want it too, and I cooked it, and I bought the eggs and everything, and you know, it's my show, so, you know, I think I deserve a little privacy here. By the way, to clean this pan out, while it's still good and hot, just sprinkle in some kosher salt, which we're using as an abrasive, wad up some paper towels, and scrub that sucker out. No soap or water necessary.
We know you've got your hands full at home.
I'm building a spaceship.
So Instacart is here to help make shopping a little easier. With retail partners like Walmart, you can get all you need from household items to fresh produce, and a shopper will safely deliver them contact-free in as little as 2 hours. Because between teaching, cooking, and parenting, you could use one less job to do. Go to Instacart.com or download the app to save $10 on your order from Walmart using the code WALTAP20.
Imagine the places we'll go. Together. Expedia.
Moog is the steering and suspension problem solver. Our metal gusher bearing is designed for continuous grease flow that flushes out contaminants and extends bearing life. which helps prevent steering issues and delivers better performance. Moog, the problem solver, and the name technicians trust.
For my money, the ultimate marriage of yolk and albumin can be found in the culinary alchemy of scrambled eggs. A dish whose magic lies in the mysterious do-si-do of the proteins, fats, emulsifiers, salts, and water that is the egg. I'm sorry, did he just say mysterious do-si-do? Look, I scramble differently now. My 10-inch carbon steel pan goes into a cold oven, which I then set to 350 degrees. Yes, of course, you could do this on the cooktop alone, but only if you happen to have one of these or a really great eye for spotting a pan at 350, which I don't. Besides, it's breakfast, so odds are I've got some bacon going in here, and yes, I roast my bacon, and yes, that's another show. 30 minutes minimum. For one large serving, or two small, we require 3 large chicken eggs and 2 teaspoons of mayonnaise, which being an emulsion will actually help to keep our scramble nice and creamy. As for spices, I like a mere teaspoon of harissa, a paste-like melange of peppers, garlic, caraway, and cumin commonly employed in the cuisines of the Maghreb, including countries like, of course, Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia. Now, I personally make my own harissa. We shared that recipe in our show, My Shashuka, but you can also purchase harissa in various forms from jar to tub to tube. And the tube would probably be my favorite because it's easy to dispense. If, of course, I didn't make my own, but we'll go with store-bought for this application. Oh, and you're gonna need a teaspoon of butter. 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt and a teaspoon of water go into the 3 eggs, along with the harissa paste and, of course, the mayonnaise. Now, the water is there to kind of lighten the mixture and help it come together. There. Now, just whisk until thoroughly combined. Perfect. Our pan is good to go at 350, no maybes, but unlike the fried scenario, your pan goes over whatever passes for medium heat on your cooktop. We've got to keep the heat on because we've got more mass going in here than we did before. All right, just as we did before, the butter goes in, and when it's melted, in go the eggs. And remember, we're overheat this time. When the eggs hit the pan, count down from 10. No cheating, no rushing. You know how to do this. Now, give the eggs a quick stir and count down from 10 again. Seriously, don't touch it. I know you want to, don't. Seriously, don't touch it yet. Okay, give another stir, and this time count down from 5. Now, give it a couple of good stirs and count down from 5 one more time. I know it looks messy, let it go. Now we evacuate. There, right onto the plate. A little sprig of parsley might be nice. Hold on. All right, I know some of this looks a little undercooked, but remember, if it looks cooked in the pan, it will be overcooked on the plate. That deserves repeating. If it looks cooked in the pan, it will be overcooked on the plate. Scrambled eggs, like they're fried to kin, are best with toast points or just plain toast if your mom taught you not to point. By the way, eggs aren't just for breakfast. When the sun goes down, simply side your eggs with a salad of bitter greens, herbs, and serve something chilled and white. Now, there is one more issue to address. Poet laureate Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "There is always a best way of doing everything, even if it be to boil an egg." Now, if Emerson walked it the way he talked it, he would have certainly have known that the secret to boiling an egg is to not really boil it at all. All right, hold it right there. Look, pretty much every hard-cooked egg that I've consumed since 2009 has been steamed. But before we get to that process, I just want to say right up front that in my personal opinion, fresh eggs taken from right beneath the chicken are harder to peel when cooked than older eggs for reasons including but not limited to lower pH, adhesion of the outer membrane to the shell, and very, very small demons. Luckily, by the time most of us get our eggs home from the Mega Mart, sufficient time has passed to relieve the issue. The downside with eggs that are much, much older is that as the white thins with age, the yolk can settle closer to the edge of the shell, a fact that has wrecked many a deviled egg. That will not happen to us today.
got big plans for your small business. And Constant Contact has everything you need to connect with customers, find new ones, and sell more of your awesome stuff online. With email marketing, online stores, and more to help you do more business anytime, anywhere. So you can keep powering on without slowing down. Up top, power on with Constant Contact. Try it free today.
Imagine the places we'll go. Together. Expedia.
Here now my new and improved procedure for hard-cooked eggs. I have a medium saucepan and inside it about an inch of water currently boiling over medium-high heat. Into a folding steamer basket, I have placed half a dozen eggs directly from the refrigerator. That's important. The basket goes into the pot, the lid goes on, and a timer is set for 11 minutes, which will result in a cooked but still slightly creamy yolk. If you like yours harder, try 13 minutes. Okay. Now, steam is my choice here because although it's hot, it's physically less violent than boiling water. Ergo, less likely to cause cracks. Steam is also more reliable because unlike water, whose temperature actually drops when the eggs go in, the temperature of steam is pretty much a constant at standard pressure, which we don't have time to get into now. Here's another change. I no longer shocked the cooked eggs in ice water, which in my opinion makes peeling harder, possibly by constricting the inner membranes. Now I simply dunk them in tepid water until they are just cool enough to handle. When the time is up, kill the heat and evacuate the eggs. I usually just lift out the entire basket. Careful, there's a lot of hot going on there. And move into the water. Honestly, I leave them in here maybe 30 seconds, just long enough to cool them down so that I can handle them. And when I crack them, notice I do it on the edge of the bowl, but the edge of this bowl is flat. Just want to point that out. And I do the actual peeling underwater. Make sure you get your fingers underneath that outer membrane, smooth as a baby's bottom or my head, depending on how you look at it. Repeat, and then slice one open. Now here we've got an 11-minute egg. The white is still very pliable, and the interior, the yolk is clearly creamy. 12 minutes gives you a slightly firmer white and a drier yolk, and 13 even more so. There you can actually see a crack if you like that kind of thing. Me, I'm gonna go with the 11 minutes every time. A little salt, then devour. Well, with 18 pages of new material, we didn't so much reload this episode as remake it. In fact, we ended up cutting out the entire lemon curd scene from the original because, well, let's face it, the basics are worth getting right, even if it's 20 years plus down the line. After all, a perfectly cooked egg is the very essence of Good evening. Back in 2000, coffee was still just coffee. Hipsterism was a decade away, Starbucks only had 3,500 stores, and espresso was still called espresso more often than not. And yet, even then, I considered a great cup of joe to be a basic human right. And so, in episode 21, we attempted to lay the groundwork for better coffee. Get it? Groundwork. Alas, we know a lot more about coffee today than we did 20 years ago, so it only seems right to update, repair, and renovate True Brew, the first fully caffeinated episode of Good morning. Where are you guys all headed off to? Oh, going for that first cup of Morning Joe, huh? Hey, Samuel L. Jackson called. He wants his hat back. Seriously, I can't watch this. Next scene. The coffee bean is actually the pit of a cherry-like fruit that grows, botanically speaking, on one of 2 varieties of coffee tree. Yeah, so there's no hard outer shell on a coffee bean, just a membrane or chaff. So technically, it's a seed, not a pit. He hates being wrong. Now, Robusto trees are hardy and high-yielding, but their beans render a brew that's all power, meaning caffeine, and no flavor. They're kind of the malt liquors of the hot beverage world. On the other hand, Arabica trees, like this one, are shy, finicky, delicate mountain dwellers that produce a measly 2 pounds of beans a year. But oh, the beans. Not only do Arabica beans deliver a sublime gestalt of flavor, acidity, body, and aroma, they actually have the ability to capture the essence of where they were grown. Like great wine grapes, Arabica beans deliver terroir, which means that not only are beans from the 3 major world growing areas different from each other, but within each of these areas, there are hundreds of different subtle variations. Now, as much as I don't care for gross generalizations, I do have a little analogy that I've been working on to kind of sum up this whole world coffee thing. So here I go. Okay, I've got 20 years of coffee drinking on that younger version of me. So let's start this over. Coffees from Mexico, Central and South America tend to deliver traditional coffee flavor profiles with a little bit of cocoa. Africa gives us beans with citrus, berry, and floral notes, while those from Indonesia and Sumatra are earthy and, well, just plain funky. Vietnam, Thailand, India also grow a great deal of coffee, but those are going to have to wait for another show. Let's roast. Now, at this point, the beans are referred to as green. They don't look a whole lot like coffee, and to tell you the truth, if you were to brew up a cup, it wouldn't taste much like coffee. It would taste more like, well, yard clipping soup, probably. No, it requires the talents of master roasters at this point to fulfill the flavor potential of the bean through the application, judicious application, of heat, which is the next step, because once they're sucked up through this hopper, these beans will head into this giant, oversized, well, gas-powered clothes dryer, I guess you'd say, which is being operated by a master roaster. In this case, Dr. Don Wilson.
Hi,
how you doing, Don?
Good, thanks. Good.
Thanks for having me in.
You're welcome.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What exactly is it that roasting does?
Well, what we're going to do is bring the beans up through temperature, and we're looking for color, consistency, and most important, we're going to look for chemical change in the beans to bring out the aromas, the flavors. It's a process called pyrolysis. The first crack is where the water comes to boiling temperature and it pops and starts to turn to steam.
Kind of like popcorn?
Yeah, and it cracks the bean and pops the chaff out.
Will we actually hear that? You hear the pop?
You'll hear it.
I mean, what do you think is kind of the optimum balance between the flavor of the bean and the flavor of the roast?
It's a question of personal preference, but as people learn more about coffee, they'll learn that different levels of roast suit particular coffees better.
This is certainly the case with third wave coffee, a fairly recent movement that seeks to express the individual characteristics of coffees grown in very specific locales, often eschewing darker roasts.
That's the first crack. You're hearing it now.
Yeah,
and we're going to take frequent samples to determine when it's absolutely at its best. We're going to see a little bit of oil appearing. Just in the center of the surface of the bean.
That's starting to look like a seriously cooked coffee bean. Oil does rise to the surface during roasting, but excessive oiliness can signify a loss of freshness. Even dark roasts should just barely shimmer.
I got seconds now to get this right, so I'm going on a combination of eye, nose, and ear. Okay, we're ready to drop.
Since Don was after a bright acidity and regional characteristic, he stopped these beans at a light city roast. Whoa, no, hold it, just stop. This isn't, look, Starting at the green state, some roasters only produce 3 levels of roast: light, medium, which doesn't always look that much different, and dark. Others go into a bit more detail, with an American roast on the lighter end, followed sometimes by a city roast, typically, and then a full city, which happens to be my personal favorite. Then they move into the darker stuff with French roasts, followed usually by Italian roasts, and then finally by the charcoal-like Spanish roast, which all kind of look the same to me.